The Shattered Princess. The grand ballroom of Hyde House glittered with the kind of wealth that made ordinary people dizzy. Chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and the air smelled of expensive champagne and the faint whisper of expectation. Maya Rothschild stood near the terrace windows, her hand resting protectively over the barely visible curve of her belly, hidden beneath the flowing fabric of her emerald gown. She had kept this secret for 3 months now, since that morning she discovered the pregnancy test glowing with its life-changing truth. Alexander Gray, her husband of 2 years, still didn't know. She had been waiting for the right moment, planning how to tell him, imagining his reaction might eventually soften his cold, calculating exterior. That moment never came. "My wife, the liar," Alexander's voice cut through the evening like a blade. He had found out through his private investigator, not from her confession. He was standing near the orchestra, his dark suit impeccable, his handsome face twisted with something that looked more like disgust than anger. "Did you think I wouldn't discover your little scheme to trap me? To bind me to you with a child?" The ballroom seemed to pause. Conversations died. Heads turned. Maya felt the weight of 100 stares, each one heavier than the last. Her heart shattered in that moment, watching the man she had slowly begun to love, despite his coldness, despite his obsession with power, look at her with such contempt. "Alexander, please," she whispered, moving toward him, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn him. "You're an embarrassment," he continued, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "To me, to this family, to everything I've built. I won't have a child. I won't have you. This marriage is over." The words landed like physical blows. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. With trembling hands, she turned and walked toward the terrace doors, her chin held high even as her soul splintered into 1,000 pieces. As she stepped into the cold London night, the roar of engines erupted behind her. A convoy of black vehicles pulled up to the entrance, their presence commanding and unmistakable. Armed escorts descended, moving with the precision of people trained to protect something invaluable. Their eyes found her immediately, and they dropped into respectful bows. "Lady Vale," the lead escort said, his voice carrying centuries of deference. "Your grandfather has been waiting. The household anxiously anticipates your return." The ballroom behind her fell into chaos. Through the glass doors, she could see Alexander's face, pale, shocked, as if watching his entire world collapse into a truth he had never suspected. Maya looked at these strangers who somehow belonged to her, then back at the man who had just destroyed her in front of London's elite. She didn't recognize herself in this moment. The woman who stepped into the black limousine was someone new, someone harder, someone born from pain and ancient power. The doors closed, and the convoy vanished into the night. The Vale family estate sprawled across 1,200 acres of English countryside, a testament to generations of accumulated wealth and influence. Grey stone and climbing ivy created the appearance of a place that had always existed, as if the land itself had conspired to build a sanctuary for the Vale name. Maya arrived just before dawn, stepping from the limousine into a world that should have felt like home but only felt strange. Marcus Vale waited for her in the library, a room that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. At 84, he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had learned that power didn't require speed. His silver hair was perfectly groomed, his eyes the same deep brown as Maya's own. "My granddaughter," he said simply, extending his hand. She took it, feeling the tremor of age but also the unmistakable strength beneath his papery skin. "Welcome home. Your mother would have been proud." Maya's throat tightened. She had never known her mother, had grown up with carefully constructed lies about her family lineage. The Vale name had been erased from her history, replaced with the mundane Rothschild identity, a protection against those who might seek leverage against the empire. "Why am I here?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "If you kept me hidden all these years, why reveal me now?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Because you've been suffering in silence, playing the role of an ordinary wife to a man who never deserved you. Because it's time you knew who you are. And because your grandfather is old, and the Vale family needs its true heir." Over the following weeks, Maya fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings were spent with David Chen, the family's business advisor, learning the intricate networks of power that the Vales controlled. Afternoons involved meetings with family lawyers and financial advisors. Evenings found her in the estate's gardens, watching the sun paint the English countryside in shades of gold and amber. It was during one of these evening walks that Sophia Kensington arrived. They had been best friends since university, before Maya's marriage had consumed her life. Sophia took one look at Maya's face and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Tell me everything," Sophia demanded, dragging Maya to the estate's private terrace overlooking the grounds. "And don't spare a single detail about this mysterious family or this absolutely gorgeous estate." Over wine and the soft sounds of evening, Maya told her everything. Sophia listened with the kind of attention that only true friendship could provide, and when Maya finally broke down, Sophia held her as she wept for the dream she had lost and the identity she was still learning to claim. "You know what I think," Sophia said, brushing tears from Maya's cheek. "I think you're going to be extraordinary. I think this man, this Alexander, is going to realize what he threw away, and it's going to destroy him." Back in London, Alexander Gray was experiencing exactly that destruction. He sat in his penthouse office, surrounded by the trappings of his success, and felt them turning to ashes. His business associates had begun to distance themselves, rumors circulating that he had publicly humiliated the heiress to the Vale fortune. Phone calls went unreturned. Contracts were quietly withdrawn. Within 2 weeks, his carefully constructed empire had begun to crumble. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself that Maya had been scheming all along, that she had engineered this entire situation. But in the darkness of his bedroom, with her absence like a physical weight, he knew the truth. He had destroyed the one person who had ever looked at him and seen something beyond the success and the money. He had destroyed the only woman he had ever loved. The dance of reconciliation. 3 months had passed when the invitation arrived on creamy paper with the Vale crest embossed in gold. The International Business Summit in Paris, sponsored by the Vale Consortium. Alexander stared at it for a long time, knowing this was either a carefully orchestrated accident or a deliberate invitation to his own destruction. He went anyway. The gala was held at a private mansion overlooking the Seine, its windows glowing with soft light against the Paris night. Alexander found himself in the same position he had been in London, surrounded by the city's elite, feeling utterly alone. He was nursing a whiskey when he saw her. Maya descended the grand staircase in a gown of midnight blue that seemed to flow like liquid moonlight around her body. She wore her power like a crown, her dark hair swept back from her face, her bare shoulders holding a dignity that hadn't been there before. Beside her was an older man, her grandfather, he assumed, and a woman with blonde hair who watched Maya with obvious affection. Their eyes met across the room for a fraction of a second, and Alexander felt the world tilt. The evening progressed with terrible, aching slowness. Alexander watched Maya from across the ballroom, watched as she moved through conversations with the ease of someone born to this world, watched as she laughed with the blonde woman, who he later learned was Sophia Kensington, and felt each moment like a knife twisting in his chest. Later, driven by something he couldn't name, he found himself on the mansion's rooftop. The Paris night stretched out before him, the city of light glittering against the darkness. He was alone for only a moment before he heard her voice. "You shouldn't be up here," Maya said, stepping through the glass doors. She had changed into simpler clothes, a cream-colored silk blouse and black trousers, but she was somehow more beautiful than she had been in the gown. "Neither should you," he replied, unable to look away from her face. They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. Finally, Maya moved closer to the edge of the rooftop, her eyes fixed on the city below. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly. "With our child. A daughter. I found out at the 7-month scan. We're having a daughter, Alexander." The words struck him like a physical blow. "Maya, I don't want to hear your apologies," she interrupted, her voice trembling but strong. "I don't want your excuses or your sudden change of heart. What you did that night, what you said." She turned to face him, and he could see the tears she was fighting to hold back. "You broke something inside me." "I know," he whispered. "I know, and I would give anything, everything, to take it back." Without conscious thought, he moved toward her. His hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had finally escaped her eyes. "I was terrified," he continued, his forehead pressing against hers. Terrified of losing control, terrified of becoming my father, terrified that loving you meant weakness. But I was wrong. So wrong. Maya's hands gripped his shoulders, her entire body trembling. You can't just show up and say that, Alexander. You can't expect me to. But he was kissing her, desperately, as if she were air and he were drowning. And after a moment's resistance, she was kissing him back, her tears mixing with his as months of pain and longing poured into that single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Maya rested her forehead against his chest. We have so much to figure out, she whispered. I know, Alexander replied, his arms wrapped protectively around her and their unborn daughter. But we can figure it out together. Please tell me we can figure it out together. The Paris night held them in its embrace as the city sparkled below, and for the first time in months, neither of them felt entirely alone. The negotiation took place in the offices of a neutral firm in New York, surrounded by lawyers and business advisors. Maya sat across from Alexander, with David Chen on one side and Elena Marquez, Alexander's business advisor and, it was becoming clear, his only real friend, on the other. The Vale Group is prepared to absorb your company's debts, David explained, sliding a document across the polished table. In exchange, you would maintain operational control of your current projects while operating under the Vale umbrella. Alexander didn't look at the document. He was looking at Maya, trying to read the expression on her face. She was professional, distant, a woman he recognized but didn't entirely know. This was the heiress, he realized. This was the power she had been born into. On one condition, Maya said, her voice steady as steel. You meet with a therapist. Someone who specializes in power dynamics and family trauma. I need to know that you're willing to do the work, Alexander. For yourself. For our daughter. For us. There was a long silence. Elena was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Finally, he nodded. Agreed, he said. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. Alexander began to genuinely change. The therapy forced him to confront the cruelty of his father, the pressure he had internalized to succeed at any cost, the fear that had driven him to dominate rather than connect. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to understand himself. And slowly, painstakingly, Maya began to trust him again. They spent time together with Sophia and David, in group settings that felt safe. They attended her medical appointments together, watching ultrasound images of their daughter growing inside her. They didn't make promises they weren't sure they could keep, but they allowed something new to grow between them, something built on honesty rather than power, vulnerability rather than control. It was at one of these appointments, watching the ultrasound technician point out their daughter's perfect heart, that Alexander broke down. He stood in that clinical room, his hand on Maya's belly, and wept for the months he had almost lost, for the man he had almost remained. I'm sorry, he whispered against her skin. I'm so sorry. Maya ran her fingers through his hair, and for the first time since Paris, she said the words he had been desperate to hear. I know. And I forgive you. 6 weeks before their daughter was due, Alexander showed up at the Vale estate with a simple box. Maya was in the garden when she saw him, and her heart began to race. He looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. They sat on a stone bench overlooking the grounds, the same place where she had wept with Sophia months before. I know you might say no, Alexander began, his hands shaking as he opened the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. I know I haven't earned the right to ask. But I need to ask anyway. Maya Vale, will you marry me? Not the marriage we had before, not the one built on lies and power games. A real marriage. One where we choose each other every single day. Maya looked at the ring, at this man who had once humiliated her and had spent months trying to become worthy of her forgiveness. She thought about their daughter, growing inside her. She thought about the person she had become, stronger and more certain of her own worth. Yes, she whispered, and when he slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like a beginning rather than a return. Rewritten destinies. The private island villa was their retreat, a place where neither the Vale Empire nor Alexander's business empire could reach them. 6 weeks after the birth of their daughter, beautiful, perfect Isabella, Alexander and Maya found themselves alone for the first time since becoming parents. Isabella was with her nanny and Sophia at the main house, giving them what Marcus had called the honeymoon they never had. The cottage overlooked turquoise water, its open design meant to let in the ocean breeze and the sound of waves. Maya stood on the terrace in a white linen dress, her body finally beginning to feel like her own again. The pregnancy had changed her in ways both physical and emotional, making her more aware of her own strength, her own resilience. Alexander approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her carefully, as if she was still fragile. "I love you," he said into her hair. "I need to say it every day for the rest of our lives, because it's the most true thing I've ever felt." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. The man who stood before her was different from the one she had married. Softer, more present, more genuinely himself. His eyes had lost that sharp calculation and now held only warmth and devotion. "I love you too," she replied, and then she kissed him. It started tender, a simple affirmation of their new beginning, but it deepened quickly. Months of separation, of pain, of careful rebuilding all poured into that kiss. Alexander's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer as Maya's fingers tangled in his dark hair. They moved inside without breaking contact, guided by instinct and desire. The cottage was designed for intimacy, soft lighting, luxurious fabrics, the constant sound of the ocean as a soundtrack. Alexander slowly slipped the white linen dress from her shoulders, revealing the body he had thought about for so long, the body that had carried their daughter. "You're beautiful," he whispered against her collarbone, kissing the soft skin there. "You're so beautiful, and you're mine. Tell me you're mine." "I'm yours," Maya breathed, her head tilted back as sensation washed through her. "And you're mine, Alexander. Completely mine." They made love slowly, deliberately, every touch a conversation of apology and forgiveness, of promise and devotion. Alexander was careful with her, mindful of the changes her body had been through, but Maya pulled him deeper, needing to feel the reality of him, needing to know that this was real and not some dream that would dissolve with the morning light. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the oceanside bedroom, the white curtains billowing in the sea breeze. Alexander traced gentle patterns on Maya's shoulder as she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never thought we'd get here," Maya admitted. "When you said those things in London, when they came with the black convoy, I thought you were lost to me forever." "I was," Alexander replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I was lost to myself. But you found me. You gave me the chance to become someone worthy of you." Maya lifted her head to look at him. In the soft light filtering through the curtains, he looked almost vulnerable, stripped of all the armor he had spent years constructing. "We found each other," she corrected gently. "I was lost too, Alexander. I was so lost in trying to be what everyone needed, what you needed, what my family needed. It took everything falling apart for me to find myself." Alexander cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "And now?" he asked softly. "Now," Maya said, smiling, "we build something new. Something real." They made love again as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. This time it was slower, more intimate, a profound connection that transcended the physical. Alexander whispered words of love and devotion against her skin. Maya responded with soft sighs and gentle touches, each caress an affirmation of their journey from destruction to wholeness. As darkness fell over the island, they lay in each other's arms, the sound of the ocean their only companion. Alexander's hand moved to Maya's heart, feeling it beat steadily beneath his palm. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy," he said. "Making Isabella happy. Building a life that's worthy of this second chance." Maya turned to face him one more time, her eyes reflecting the starlight coming through the windows. "You already are," she whispered, and kissed him again with all the love and forgiveness that filled her heart. The black convoy that had taken her away that night in London had changed everything. It had stripped away the lies, the pretense, the carefully constructed facades they had both been hiding behind. It had brought them to this moment, to this island, to this bed, to this love that was deeper and more real than either of them could have imagined. As they drifted into sleep, their bodies intertwined, their hearts beating in synchronization, it was clear that the real transformation had never been about wealth or power or status. It had been about two broken people learning to truly see each other, learning to love not despite their flaws but because of their commitment to becoming better. In the darkness of the cottage, surrounded by the sound of waves and the warmth of the man she loved beyond reason, Maya felt complete. The girl who had been humiliated in a London ballroom was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her own worth, a woman who had claimed her power, a woman who had chosen love not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Alexander held her close, his face buried in her hair, breathing in the scent of ocean salt and the jasmine she loved. He had been given a miracle, a second chance with a woman he loved, a daughter he had been afraid to want, a life that meant something beyond acquisition and conquest. "I love you," he whispered one final time as sleep claimed them both. "And I love you," Maya replied, her voice already drifting toward dreams. "Always." The waves continued their eternal rhythm outside, the stars continued their ancient dance across the sky, and on that small island, a love story that had nearly been tragedy instead blossomed into something beautiful and true. They had both been lost, and they had found each other. In that finding, they had found themselves, and in finding themselves, they had found home.